Before diving into this incredible story, consider subscribing to the channel and activating the bell. Each story here has something to say, and you won't want to miss any of them. Sophia, a black woman in her 40s, moved silently through the gleaming hallways of a large corporate headquarters, a shadow amid the glass walls and immaculate offices. Her simple, unassuming cleaning uniform made her nearly invisible to the people who worked there, a quiet presence that no one really noticed. Every day, she swept, mopped, and polished the floors beneath the feet of the impeccably dressed executives, men and women immersed in discussions about numbers, strategy, and acquisitions. They were too absorbed in their own worlds to notice Sophia, too preoccupied with deadlines and important meetings to pay attention to the woman who made the floor beneath their feet shine. But Sophia saw it all. Silently, she observed every indifferent glance, every wry smile, every sneer when they thought they were safe from prying eyes. Perhaps they thought their status and power made them inaccessible, but Sophia memorized it all. She listened intently to the conversations that went on over their heads, the rumors, the manipulative strategies, the power games that played out in the hallways, at the coffee machine, in the private offices. She knew the secrets that not even the personal assistants knew, the flaws and the masks of perfection that each of them wore with pride. Sophia said nothing, let nothing show. Her hands scrubbed the surfaces, but her mind was elsewhere. She knew things about this company that not even the managers knew, details that no one suspected she could understand, but which she used to reconstruct the image of that ruthless world, stone by stone, in her head. She knew who was betraying whom, who silently despised their colleagues, who was plotting in the shadows to get a promotion. And yet, no one noticed her presence. In the eyes of the company executives, she was just Sophia, a cleaning lady who did her job quietly, without disturbing anyone. But Sophia, with her wisdom and silence, understood better than they did the ruthless mechanics of power that governed those places. No one could have imagined that Sophia was not just a cleaning lady. Behind her modest appearance, her discreet uniform, and her precise gestures, there was a secret that no one there could have imagined. She was, in fact, the owner of that immense building. A few months earlier, in a secret and daring transaction, Sophia had bought the entire real estate company that owned that prestigious building. This decision, however, was anything but ordinary. It was not an ordinary acquisition motivated by the simple desire to own more properties. No, Sophia had sensed, through the echoes of the hallways and the muffled sounds of the meetings, that something was wrong with that company. She had been observing this world from the shadows for years. The arrogant executives, the condescending looks, the injustices that not even the veneer of elegance could hide. An environment where those who cleaned, who kept these places impeccable, were ignored, invisible, treated with latent contempt. Sophia had seen the dehumanization, the small abuses of power, the common injustices that happened every day. So when he had the opportunity to buy the building, he didn't hesitate. But instead of showing himself as the new owner, he made a radical, almost unthinkable decision. He chose to blend in with the most invisible employees, the ones no one looked at, the ones who were there but no one saw. Sophia traded her businesswoman's clothes for a cleaning lady's uniform, entering the building every day as if she were just another employee. At no point did she let the truth show, preferring to observe, listen, and understand from within. She wanted to see with her own eyes how that world really worked, how the most humble were treated, those who kept everything tidy and shiny, but who never received recognition. She wanted to feel what it was like to be ignored, reduced to a role that society considered insignificant. Executives walked past her without a glance, without even a word of thanks. They sidled around her, sometimes avoiding her, as if her mere presence might disturb the impeccable order of their world. Ironically, they walked across the floors she made shine every morning, unaware that they were treading on the floor belonging to the true lady of the house. They discussed mergers, acquisitions, profits, unaware that the greatest power maneuvers in that building did not take place in their silent offices, but in Sophia's humble and silent gestures. She observed everything, recorded everything, every word, every interaction. She saw who the real leaders were, who respected their subordinates, and who among them considered themselves superior to everyone else. Sophia knew far more about the company than any member of the board. Her observations were not only aimed at understanding, but also at preparing for something greater. She harbored a secret project, a plan that would shake the very foundations of the company and its invisible hierarchies. And when the time came, she would reveal everything. She would not only change the soil, but transform the entire enterprise, reshaping it in the image of justice and humility that she had never ceased to cultivate. Her revelation would be no mere announcement, but a thunderclap that would change the way we saw the unseen, those who, like her, had always been there, silent and powerful in the shadows. One day, while cleaning near the boardroom, Sophie heard raised, distinct, and intense voices. The executives were fervently debating a drastic cost-cutting strategy. The words flew, full of certainty and arrogance. They talked about laying off employees, eliminating entire departments, reducing lives and families to mere numbers on an Excel spreadsheet. They even condescendingly mentioned the idea of cutting the cleaning staff, believing that their absence would make little difference. They didn't realize, in their bubble of privilege, that the one person they were trying to fire, the one they despised so despisably, was actually the one who could, with a single word, change their fate. Sophia, methodical in her movements, continued to clean slowly, but her mind was working quickly, buzzing with ideas and emotions. She had always known that such a decision would be a hard blow to the most vulnerable employees, those who, like her, had dedicated their lives to making this place a place where success was possible. Each stroke of the mop was accompanied by vivid and critical thoughts about these leaders who, in their pursuit of savings, ignored the human repercussions of their decisions. The men in suits huddled in the boardroom had no idea of the impact of their words. They were discussing numbers, but they didn't see the faces behind them, the smiling children to be fed, the dreams to be fulfilled. Sophia watched them, and a fire of determination began to burn inside her. She knew that this company needed not just a new financial strategy, but a complete overhaul of its culture. A culture where every voice counts, where every individual, regardless of their role, is valued. She remembered the arguments she had heard among employees, rumors of unfairness, complaints about pay, and unheard testimonies of dedication. It was time to take action, to gather these stories, to give voice to those who were often silenced. She realized then that her position as a silent observer could become her greatest strength. She had access to information and perspectives that leaders had never considered. The idea of reaching out to employees and uniting them began to form in her mind. What if she could create a coalition? A collective force that could thwart the plans of those who had lost their way in the pursuit of profit. She knew that the often undervalued service employees were actually the heart of the company. They knew its inner workings, its flaws, and its hidden potential. Sophia focused on the noise of the meeting, on the cries of joy and anguish that reached her, fueling her conviction that what she was doing, what she was seeing, was much more than just a cleaning job. It was a mission. She dreamed of a future where the company didn't just care about maximizing profits, but actually cared about the people who made it work. That day, as she scrubbed the floor, Sophia began to imagine how, from this room, she could rewrite the history of that company and all the lives it touched. The next day, during a special meeting called by management, Sophia entered the large conference room. But this time she was not wearing her usual cleaning lady's uniform. She was wearing an elegant suit, discreet yet imposing, which emphasized her stature and authority. Her footsteps echoed in the silence of the room, a stark contrast to the discretion she had demonstrated until that day. The shock in the room was immediate. Eyes turned to her, incredulous, astonished. Some of the executives who had walked past her hundreds of times without even sparing her a glance were now frozen in their chairs, their faces etched with total incomprehension. How could they have been so blind? How could they have ignored the one who silently watched them day after day? A murmur ran through the room, a palpable shockwave. Those who had humiliated her, ignored her, and even considered firing her just hours before were now forced to confront a reality completely beyond their reach. Their hands shook slightly as they adjusted their files, their gazes avoiding Sophia's. Sophia, on the other hand, remained calm, her face impassive, but her eyes shone with renewed determination. She knew this was her moment. Sophia walked slowly toward the center of the room, where all eyes were focused. Every step she took was loaded with meaning, every movement calculated. When she finally stopped in front of them, silence fell. The previously arrogant faces were now imbued with a strange vulnerability. The atmosphere, initially tense, had transformed into one of nervous anticipation. Everyone waited, hanging on her every word. In a calm but firm voice, Sophia spoke. "Ladies and gentlemen, I am Sophia, and I am the owner of this building and, by extension, one of the main shareholders of this company." Her words hit like a storm. Some exchanged panicked looks. Others seemed paralyzed by the information. "For months, I worked among you, incognito, as a simple cleaning lady. I heard your conversations, saw your actions, and observed how you treated the people around you." She paused, letting her words sink in. "What I saw showed me how badly this company needed change. Radical change." The executives held their breath. They understood now that it wasn't just their ignorance she was exposing, but also their practices, their way of running the company like a cold, inhuman empire. Starting today, reforms will be implemented. Changes that will affect not only the way this company is run, but more importantly, the way its employees are treated at every level. No one here will be invisible anymore. Every employee, from the top executive to the cleaning staff, will have a voice, a respected role, and equal rights. The silence that followed her words was deafening. The executives, once arrogant and confident in their position of power, suddenly realized that Sophia held not only the keys to the building, but also the keys to their future. Their faces flushed with shame, realizing that they had built their sense of superiority on illusions. The woman they had ignored, almost despised, now stood before them as their new boss, not for revenge, but to restore a justice that was sorely lacking within their walls. Sophia went on to describe the new measures. A complete overhaul of employment contracts to ensure fairer and more humane conditions, a strengthening of workers' rights, and a revaluation of professions often considered invisible or subordinate. She also announced the creation of a commission of workers' representatives, tasked with ensuring that discriminatory practices and abuses of power would no longer be tolerated. The men in suits, once so confident in themselves, listened in silence, absorbing every word, aware that their world had just changed irreversibly. This building is a symbol of what this company can become. A place of collaboration, of mutual respect, where everyone, regardless of position, is recognized for their contribution. I will no longer tolerate injustice, condescension, or exploitation. You will have the opportunity to adapt to this new era, or else. She trailed off, but the message was clear. Those who refused to follow this new direction could well find themselves on the side of the laid-off workers, a bitter irony after the discussions she had heard the day before. Sophia ended her speech on a hopeful note. "We all have the opportunity to restore this company to its true greatness by building a culture based on integrity, fairness, and respect. It's up to you to decide if you want to be a part of that." This was the lesson Sophie wanted to teach them. You can judge someone by their appearance or their position, but true power lies in their spirit, their integrity, and the ability to turn humiliation into strength. She had spent many years being seen as a mere janitor, being undervalued and ignored. Every day, she witnessed how her colleagues, dressed in their expensive suits, made decisions that affected lives, never considering the impact of their words. But Sophie knew that appearances were just a facade, and that true wealth lay in inner strength, resilience, and the ability to rise again after being knocked down. She had learned that lesson the hard way over the years. Every time she had been snubbed, every time her uniform had been made fun of, she had gritted her teeth and kept her cool. She had resolved not to let these humiliations define her. Instead, she had committed herself to observing, to understanding the inner workings of this company, to learning from the people around her. Every sneer, every look of disdain, only strengthened her resolve to prove herself. She knew her moment would come, and she wanted it to be a powerful one. Sophia wanted everyone in that room to realize that true strength is not measured by wealth or power, but by the ability to get back up after a fall. She wanted them to understand that true leaders don't just give orders. They inspire, lift others up, and drive positive change. For Sophia, being a leader meant having the empathy to listen to the voices of the weak, to stand up for those who couldn't stand up for themselves. She knew it was time to break down stereotypes and redefine the perception of what a true leader was. She wasn't there to exact revenge, but to teach. Sophia firmly believed that everyone, regardless of position, had the potential to transform the company culture into one where respect and dignity reigned. She wanted her colleagues to understand that strength lies in diversity of experiences and perspectives, that every voice, even that of the cleaning lady, can contribute significantly to collective success. By taking control of the situation, she showed that it was possible to turn things around, to create an environment where compassion and understanding prevailed over pride and arrogance. Sophia hoped that by sharing her story, by revealing her true identity, she would open her colleagues' eyes to their own behavior and encourage them to reflect on how they interacted with others, especially those they considered inferior. She also wanted to drive broader change within the company, one that went beyond simple budget adjustments. She wanted all employees, regardless of their role, to be valued for their skills, creativity, and humanity. By making power accessible to everyone, she believed the company could thrive sustainably, cultivating an inclusive environment where everyone felt like they belonged and was proud to contribute. The transformation she envisioned would not be easy, but Sophia was up for the challenge. With her vision, integrity, and determination, she set out to prove that true power did not lie in a title or position, but in the ability of each individual to stand up and make their voice heard, regardless of their background. She was determined to show her peers that change was possible and that everyone had a role to play in that transformation.